Hey, fierce feminines. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode. As you can see from the title, we're going to be talking understanding the roots of insecurities. And I actually got the idea for this episode because it was just last week, actually. I ran a session, a free 5-day challenge for women who experience insecurities and self doubt and get and essentially the aim of that 5-day challenge was get them to start to lay the foundations of a more confident version of themselves so they can experience the joy and freedom of having a life they desire and having that will and drive to go for what it is they truly want. But one thing that popped into my head was I started to think like, I think sometimes, and a lot of us do this, right? Because we've studied something or because we've acquired a certain knowledge, we get to a point where we make the assumption that everyone else knows the same thing we do. Um, but not necessarily so, right? So I think sometimes I take my knowledge on psychology for granted, but I was like, I feel some people might be curious as to why exactly am I so insecure? What is causing it? Today we're going to talk about three roots for your insecurity, but more importantly, what you could do about it, how you can start to address these insecurities so you can start to feel more confident and get into a much happier and much more content place in your life. So, first reason, what do you think causes that sense of insecurity and like doubting and second guessing yourself and not even trusting? Actually, I was talking to a friend of mine who suffers from anxiety, and I asked her, I was like, do you trust your intuition, and how often do you tap into your intuition? And she's like, well, to be honest, I feel like I used to be very in touch with my intuition, but things happened and now I'm like, maybe I shouldn't trust my intuition because certain things I thought may play out a certain way didn't go as planned. And that actually leads to the first point where you may be wondering like, why am I so insecure? Like, I used to be a confident person. Why am I starting to feel all these insecurities so frequently? The first one is actually due to past experiences. Very often, we may not realize, and I spoke about this in a podcast which I appeared on, what causes lack of confidence, what causes us to start to feel more insecure in our judgment and in us as a person is based on our past experiences. The way the brain works is that we build and accumulate knowledge of our surrounding and expectations, so-called expectations of how things are supposed to pan out. And by that, I mean, for example, let's say in your working environment, you may have built up a concept in your head that if I work hard, then I'll be rewarded for my efforts, right? And you're like, well, it's a no-brainer. I've learned this from past experiences. I've learned this by watching my parents be very hard workers and be rewarded for their hard work. And also, even growing up, chances are you were rewarded for when you were well behaved. You were rewarded for when you worked hard. You were rewarded for when you tidied up your room, for when you studied, when your parents told you to study. So you have now built up this bank of knowledge in your head that tells you that hard work pays off. Working hard is going to pay off. So then you go into your first job, you work extra hard, yet your manager's like, just completely glossing over your efforts. You find the colleagues are being promoted, colleagues who are probably more inexperienced than you, but they seem to be able to talk the talk, right? We all know this. People who work in 9 to 5, I'm sure you've come across that colleague who can talk the talk, but they don't actually put in any work. But they're very good at networking. They're very good at showing face, and they're very good at making themselves look good to leadership team. And you think, hang on a minute, I've been working hard, working extra hours, You may not know it, but subconsciously, your brain is feeding you that past knowledge that hard work pays off, that just put your head down, put in the work, and you get recognized for it. Now all of a sudden you're not being recognized for it. Yet that inexperienced person who doesn't even put in half as much effort, but is able to work the room and able to basically charm people into giving them promotions, you're now thinking, well, I was told hard work pays off and it's not paying off. So you may not realize it, but these situations may continue to present themselves, right? So you had that first scenario where what you thought didn't go out as planned, right? You were told one thing, you had your belief system that taught you the hard work pays off, but now you've tried it out in the workplace, it doesn't seem to be working for you. A couple of years go by, more years go by, and you keep trying what your brain has told you should be the solution, but it's not working out. And these past experiences then start to form this pattern in your head that can create that self doubt. It's like, well, actually, I thought this was what will give me this, but it doesn't seem to be working out. And then you may actually have where situations where contradicting things happen, where you may then go into another working environment where you put in the least bit of effort and then you get promoted. And then you might try it out again in another circumstance where you think, okay, I'm just gonna get away with not putting in work, right? I'm just gonna schmooze. That's the word I'm trying to say. I'm just gonna schmooze instead of actually putting work. I'm just gonna work the room. I'm gonna get everyone to like me and be friendly with everyone. I'm not gonna put in the work, but then you get fired. So there's all these contradicting messages going on around you where you're thinking one thing is necessarily going to give you the end result, but it doesn't seem to be working out that way. And that's just one example I'm giving. But past experiences can be a reason that start to build that insecurity where you were convinced that things were going to go a certain way because of the prior knowledge you had, but they didn't, things didn't pan out the way you wanted it to pan out or the way you thought it would pan out. And that over time can start to create that self-doubt. It can start to create that insecurity where you're like, I don't even trust my judgment anymore. Like I thought things were one thing, but they turn out to be completely different. So that can be one cause for your insecurity. And in terms of what do I do about it? Because there's one thing sharing with you what's causing your insecurity, but it's kind of pointless if I don't tell you what you can do to help yourself. I find with my personal experience and with my professional experience working with clients as well that cultivating self awareness is so important and learning to become an observer in your life experiences can help with this factor that creates self doubt. So if you find that you're resonating with what I'm sharing and you're thinking, oh, I see what she means about like potentially my past experiences have got me in this situation where I'm doubting myself, you want to work on cultivating self awareness. And what do I mean by cultivating self awareness? You want to create time in your life to allow for more self reflection, allow for more looking back on scenarios from a third party standpoint. You want to almost become an observer in your life and you want to almost learn to remove yourself from that sense of like feeling sorry for yourself, right? Like, oh my God, I give up. There's no point. Like, I've tried everything and it's not working. And instead, try and choose to be a scientist in your life and observer and be like, okay, let me actually look back on everything that's happened and scenarios that have panned out a certain way and really start to dissect the situations, right? Like, okay, the first time I tried it out, I put in hard work and it didn't pay off. What else was going on around that situation? Like, Did I take the time to maybe express what I wanted from the job? Did I make time to socialize? Did I make the time to create a well-rounded experience, or was my focus only on getting a promotion? Was I clear about getting the promotion? But essentially, to cultivate self-awareness, you want to ask yourself questions that pull you into a more objective standpoint, as opposed to just feeling sorry for yourself and just telling yourself like, oh, I don't know what works. I can't find a solution. I've tried everything. It doesn't work. I challenge you to try it just one more time and do it from a place from non-judgment. Do it from a place where you're not necessarily feeling sorry for yourself. You're not necessarily looking to blame that colleague or your manager. You're not necessarily looking to blame the circumstance, but you're literally just looking back and actually genuinely assessing like, what worked well? Is there something I could have done better? Is there something that maybe I shouldn't have been doing? And can I test it one more time to see if it's going to make a difference, instead of just like shrugging it off and making that assumption? Because whether you like it or not, in your subconscious, if you have got to a place where, because of past experiences, you've started to learn not to trust your own judgment, that can increase your self doubt and it can increase your level of insecurity. So, to help yourself, you want to start cultivating a self awareness by literally just asking yourself open ended questions about past experiences, and asking yourself, like, did it really not pan out the way I wanted it to? And is it because of X? Is it because of Y? Without trying to blame, but honestly, just genuinely being an observer and being genuinely curious about what can I do to make things different. And you're going to start to notice this will help with you with your level of um, insecurity, and it will help you start to take things less personally and also address situations from a more solutions oriented place, as opposed to going into a space where you're just like feeling sorry for yourself and you're just like, oh, life is hard. I don't trust my judgment. I don't trust my intuition. And instead, you step into more of a, how can I do things differently? And you find that this will help you with your levels of insecurity. The second potential root cause for your insecurity is, I feel like it'd be ridiculous for me not to mention this, but let's talk societal expectations. Societal expectations, I find, can really impact how people view themselves, how people perceive themselves. When people perceive themselves as failures, or think they're a loser because they haven't achieved X by this amount of time, or Y by this amount of time. But definitely societal expectations can be very unhelpful to your level of um, to how secure you feel in yourself, and also how confident you feel in yourself. Because whether we like it or not, we're constantly being fed subliminal messages through the media, social media, through um, even comparisons, right, to those around us. Oh, my sister got married by the age of 25, or my best friend got married at 26. I'm now 32. Why am I not yet married? Society tells us that on average, you should be having kids at a certain age. Society tells you that on average, you should be earning even literally just the other day, I saw on social media, it was doing salary comparisons. Like, at a certain age, if you're earning this in this salary bracket, you're considered successful. If you're earning in this salary bracket, you're considered rich. And I was like, here we go. But whether we like it or not, we are constantly being fed these messages through whatever medium out there, of where you should be, or where what you should have been doing at a certain age. And if you're now in your 30s and you're seeing these 25-year-old people with fame, fortune, or whatever it is, you're now questioning, like, why am I not, what's wrong with me, right? It's like, what is wrong with me? Is there something wrong with me that this person seems to have ticked off all the societal expectations as to what their relationship status should be by this age, and what their parental status should be about this by this age, and what their financial status should be by this age. So societal pressure, societal expectations do definitely put pressure on us, whether we like it or not. I know some people are like, oh, I'm not phased by societal expectations. And even honestly, I think I remember in my early 20s, I used to be like, I'm fairly open minded. I studied psychology. I now know not to let societal expectations get the best of me. Meanwhile, I'd be like crying myself to sleep at night, going, why am I still single? I'm 26 years old. Why am I not engaged? Oh my God, I have to have my first child by 28. And bear in mind, this was even after I studied psychology and I was fully aware of the impact and pressure of societal expectations. So a lot of this happens subconsciously. And going back to point one, like it's all about continuously and intentionally bringing awareness to it. Like, yes, society has said that on average, um, I should be a property owner by the age of 30, but that's on average. You have to understand this. And actually, this is a bias I learned while studying psychology, that when people hear statistics like on average, we always we have an assumption. I can't remember what the percentage is, but there's a huge percentage of us in society that expect to be above average, but that's like impossible. It's mathematically impossible when you think about stats. And I'm not going to try and explain stats or mathematics, but when you hear the word on average, there is a huge chunk of us that are actually part of the average, but we always assume ourselves to be above average. And this is like a bias that happens. Honestly, I think the bias is created again by past experiences. And I know a lot of us can relate when I say growing up. I know a lot of people who had parents who would compare them, or not even, it doesn't have to be parents, it could be teachers around you or just adults around you, grown-ups around you, that would constantly compare you. Even the school system is built to compare. Like I remember in secondary school, like there was always comparing yourself to others in terms of what grades you had, right? So we always think we should be above average when it's actually statistically impossible for a majority of us to be above average, because then it will no longer be average. But having that awareness in terms of societal expectations will help you start to pull away from the insecurities you may be experiencing due to this societal pressure. But also the other thing you want to do to help you with how secure you feel in yourself is you want to tap into your own authenticity. You want to, it might sound ridiculous carrying out an exercise like this in your late 20s, because again, this is another misconception we have, right? Like, I'm a grown woman at 27, I should know these things by now. Not necessarily. Did you study psychology? No. But now we have the assumption that we should know about how the brain works when we didn't study neurology, we didn't study psychology, yet we assume that we should already just know how our brain works. Like, without a science degree, we're thinking, oh, we should already know science in depth. Like, there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of assumptions that come with growing up and being an adult. And a lot of adults have a fear of putting their hand up and looking stupid, right? They don't want to ask questions because they feel like it might make them look stupid. But what I was going to say and suggest to help you start to relieve that pressure of societal expectations, I would recommend asking yourself, what do you truly want from yourself? And that might be challenging. Also, look up an episode I created, How to Know What You Want. But you really want to take time journaling and just sit with yourself and be like, what would I be happy with at this stage in my life? Like, yes, my family has told me I should be married by 30. And yes, I'm almost feeling like I'm not good enough. The fact that I'm yet to be married by 30. But am I genuinely upset about this? Or am I upset because I believe I should be upset about this? And I think starting to tap into your authenticity by journaling on, at the age of 30, what do you believe will make you happy? Or at the age of 25 or at the age of 26, whatever age it is, what do you believe will make you happy? Write it all down. And if you're thinking like, yeah, being in a relationship will make me happy, or being married will make me happy, or whatever it is you're writing down that will make you happy, I want you to then ask yourself again, is this me talking? Like, do I feel this will make me happy? Or is it because I've constantly been told it will make me happy? Start to ask yourself those questions. So you start to tap into your own individual expectations as opposed to societal expectations. And this will help you start to build um, your level of security you feel in yourself and your level of confidence. And last but not the least, this moves to the final point of why we experience insecurities. Reason number three is, we as humans, we have a need. It's an innate need, and it's actually a survival need to feel like we belong. A lot of people, I've noticed, like a lot of people trying to push the narrative of like authenticity and be an individual. And even I've just shared in the second point, like you want to start to tap into your own authentic definition of what success, or what you would like success to look like at your certain point in life. But I do want to stress, and I cannot stress enough, that research has shown that as humans, and even you guys can look up Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well, we have certain needs in as humans. There's a hierarchy. So Maslow is a guy, and he created a hierarchy of needs. And essentially, to reach self-actualization, where, and if you're wondering what self-actualization is, see it as like the best version of yourself, right? Where you feel good, you feel secure, you feel like at ease, you feel like life is great, you feel zen, namaste. Think of that as self-actualization. Before you can get to the top of that pyramid, there are layers of needs that must be met. And I think it's the second layer. So the first layer is physiological needs, and then the second layer is um, their sense of belonging. And as humans and the human species, and how we've evolved, there is a need for us to feel like we belong. To feel like we're part of a community, we're part of a cause, we're part of something bigger than us. Because going back to our human history, this was actually necessary for our survival. Like being part of a clan, part of a tribe, created a security and protected you from predators. It protected you from potential warfare from other tribes and other clans. So wanting to feel like you belong is natural, and don't try and push that away. Don't try and feel like you have to be this independent, Miss Independent. I don't need nobody. I'm good all by myself. I used to say this to myself, right? And there's like songs that try and reiterate that. I used to be like, I don't need anybody. I don't need anyone around me. I don't need community. I don't need friend. But if you actually look into psychology and our needs as humans, you start to understand, and research shows us that there is a need for belonging. And having this need for belonging can create insecurities, because going back to societal pressure, if you have found yourself, right, you can't pick your family, for example. If you have found yourself in a certain social construct, that will then impact the further social constructs, right? And what I mean by this is, so you don't choose the family you're born into, right? And depending on the family you're born into will likely impact what schools you go to, and what schools you go to will impact the friends you make, and what friends you make will impact your decision making, your choices about what is right, what is wrong in society. It will help you start to shape what is considered normal within your social circle. Well, what you can do, and then your social circle will make you start to um potentially feel insecure or not, right? If you feel like understanding the fact that you didn't actually necessarily choose the genesis of your social circle, if you, for any reason, maybe start to think differently to this social circle, or perhaps you start to build your self awareness, perhaps you start to build your own personal identity, perhaps you start to build your individuality, you may start to feel that you don't quite fit, or you may start to notice that you don't quite fit into this social circle you've created. And that can cause insecurities, because you may then start to face judgment. You may then start to face rejection from this social circle, because certain things you say, certain things you speak about. I've had clients and I've had friends talk to me where they're like, I feel like I've outgrown my circle of friends, because now all I want to do is talk about spirituality, and they don't want to listen to what I have to say. Oh, I've gotten into astrology and I want to constantly talk about astrology, but nobody wants to hear what I have to say. So understand that the more you grow as a person, the more you grow as an individual, the more you explore life, the more you face new experiences and new challenges, the more you may open up your mindset, the more you may open up your way of thinking. And the more you open up your way of thinking, and the more you build your own individual identity, the less you may start to fit within social circles, right? And that's not to say that you then don't need to belong, right? Knowing now that that need for belonging is innate, what do you do about that? It may be that you review. It sounds so cold hearted saying that, like just review, but have that understanding that you can outgrow your social circle. If you start to feel isolated in a friendship group, if you start to feel isolated, um, in any type of social circle, whatever that looks like, I suggest starting to find new circles, starting to find communities that look, sound, and feel more like you. Communities that resonate better with your new way of thinking, that resonate with your new level of spirituality, that resonate with your new hobbies, whatever that is. But to help you build your confidence, to help you let go of insecurities and let go of self doubt, you want to recognize your need of belonging, and you want to intentionally select communities and groups and social groups that help you feel like you belong, as opposed to push you away, reject you, and make you feel like you're not normal, essentially. So bear that in mind. And I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to end it there. But what I do want to say is, in the comment section. So if you're listening on the YouTube, and on podcast, either Apple or what's the other one, Spotify, then leave a comment below. Like, did you resonate with any of these root causes for insecurities? And if so, are you going to take on board the recommendation I shared with you? Okay, ladies, I'm going to love you and leave you now. One more time, if you're listening. No, it's not one more time because I haven't said it before. But what I was going to say before I go is, if you are listening to this on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, then do share with friends that you feel like this might resonate with as well. Okay, I'm going to love you and leave you now, and I will catch you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.